Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm very glad to welcome you to today's session on exploring patient-centric innovation, patient engagement as a catalyst for personalized digital medication management. My name is Vincent Raske. I am a program manager at The Synergist, and within my function, I work on the European project Gravitate Health, which is developing a personalized digital medication management solution and will take today's center stage. Before I get into today's objectives and agenda, let's take a moment to get settled. If I get the next slide, please. For those of you who are the first time at a PEOF session, I just want to take a moment to let you know what you've actually gotten yourselves into. The Patient Engagement Open Forum virtual series is designed to enable multi-stakeholder collaboration, always to make patient engagement stronger. We aim to have a holistic perspective on patient engagement and to be constructive and foster co-creation in a safe space that breaks fragmentation between us. That being said, in the next slide, we have an AI live translation tool that translates what is being said into more than 50 languages. You will see a pop-up on the right-hand side of your screen that you can open if you like. It will open another section on the right side of the screen, and there you will directly see the translations into a language of your choosing. Should you wish to switch into the chat because you want to share something or read what has been shared, you can do so by clicking on the chat, and switching back to the live translation tool works through the app icon on the screen. To make today's session a success, we really rely on you and need your support, leveraging the collaborative spirit of PEOF. So please be present and feel free to engage whenever you have something to share. You can use the chat for that, as all microphones will be mute. But of course, during the breakout workshops, everyone will be welcome and encouraged to speak. As a last disclaimer, this meeting, including the breakout sessions, will be recorded. All right, with that, we are all set on the administrative parts. Now let's have a look at today's objectives. Together, we will explore Gravitate Health and the project's approach to patient engagement in developing personalized digital medication management solutions. After our guest experts finalize their short presentations, you will be assigned to one of these breakout sessions you see on the screen, where you are invited to co-create together around challenges and opportunities in real-world testing of the G-Lens, which is the Gravitate Health solution, around patient engagement for sustainable uptake of the G-Lens, and around translating patient insights into technical developments. This process will unfold as follows. In the next slide, we'll have the agenda, and we'll listen to a presentation about the project as a whole and the G-Lens developments. And after that, to another presentation on the real-world application testing of the G-Lens with patients. After that, we'll all move into the workshops, and there will be assigned randomly to a different group where you can support with your insights and ideas. After the breakout sessions, we'll have a quick plenary wrap-up with key takeaways and next steps. We have with us today, representing the Gravitate Health project, Lene Lunde from the University of Oslo and Deepak Kalra from IHD, the European Institute for Innovation Through Health Data, who are both working on the testing of Gravitate Health solutions in the real world. Viola Vontor from Pfizer and Alejandro Gil Medrano from the Polytechnical University of Madrid are combining direct end-user engagement with the technological development within the project. And Michael Struven from Empirica works on the sustainability planning of the project as a whole. Of course, also with us is my co-organizer and Gravitate Health colleague from EPF, Gözde Susuzlu, and myself. And with this, I am happy to get started and hand over to Viola.
Thank you so much for the kind invitation to present to you our Gravitate Health project. So what is Gravitate Health? We are all about empowering and equipping Europeans with health information for active personal health management and adherence to treatment. We are working specifically on the product information, the e-medication leaflets or electronic medication leaflets. And we are just in the middle of the project to start to understand how we can make them more accessible and understandable. What I will do specifically today is to share with you who we are, our vision, objectives, and some of the progress to give you some context for our conversation today. And the next slide, please. Well, we are a public-private partnership funded by the Innovative Medicine Initiative and the Horizon 2020. We have, as you can see, 41 partners in Europe and in the US. We are about more than halfway through the project. We do have a program of outreach that goes beyond Europe with ecosystem engagements in other parts of the world, including the US. We also have our academic partners led by University of Oslo, and University of Oslo is one of our coordinators. We have representation from patient groups through the European Patient Forum, healthcare providers and payers, digital technical experts, a number of regulators who are directly involved in the project itself. We have product information providers, standard organizations, and a very active program of dissemination and communication that helps us partner with healthcare ecosystems and organizations, and all of you who are hosting us at this event today. So the next slide, please. Our mission is to bring innovative digital information to offer personalized, focused health information for individual patients, so that that information that you receive in a pack of medication is personalized to your own specific needs, focused on your unique situation. So we set out to solve this specific challenge on how can we apply an open access digital platform with trusted digital health information to transform the way patients currently access and understand health information, and then apply this information in personal health for adherence to treatment, risk minimization, and quality of life. As part of the project, we will deliver several things, amongst others, a federated open source platform and G-Lens services, G-Lens after Gravitate Health. And these services will be a mechanism to focus health information. As you can see on the right, we work with 3 groups of information, starting with the regulator-approved electronic product information, which is the medication information, which in short we call EPI, which is electronic patient information. That is the paper in the pack of all medications. So if you acquire a medicinal product, there is always information that goes with this medication included in the pack. Now, our efforts is to make this information digital, and that includes the digital version of the paper that is the focus for our efforts here. We are using also information like the International Patient Summary definitions and also a subset of curated information from the electronic health records. We will add also some additional health information as we go forward. So as you can see on the right, this would be the source of information for our focusing mechanism and how we envision our solution in the middle, which is the G-Lens, to actually work. So in the middle, you will see the conceptualization of what we call this G-Lens service or a Gravitate Health solution. The G-Lens take the information on the right-hand side, like the medication list, health conditions, allergies, therapy plans into consideration. And that is what we get from the International Patient Summary. But also we're considering things like outcomes, health goals, preferences, capabilities, lifestyle. And this is something that user can actually specify and make it really personal. Now, the whole purpose of all of this is to help Maria, who you can see on the left-hand side, and she will be able to use that mechanism to really better take advantage of all the information that she will need to understand and consume that is related to her medication. What you can see here, Maria holding on the right-hand side on her picture is actually a paper leaflet. And we all understand how those paper leaflets actually look like. When you cast your memory back, the last time you held one of those, it's got very short descriptions, it's got small fonts, it's got a vast amount of text, a lot of information that you have to deal with. And the way that Maria actually handles all this information, considering that she is not looking at one paper leaflet, she's currently on 15 medications that she takes several times. So if you multiply that paper that she holds on the right-hand side on her picture times 15, you can actually understand how overwhelming this experience is for Maria. So to help her manage all the information that she needs to understand and consume and use every single day, she writes down some keywords on the left-hand side related to the medications that she's taking. And this might include how to take her medications, what to pay attention to, what times of the day, how many times she needs to take those medications. So you can see this is a really, really complex experience for her. So as Gravitate Health, anything at all that we can responsibly do to make this experience for her better is what we are actually exploring here together. So I'll go to the next slide. And this actually illustrates the type of work that we have done and are currently doing as Gravitate Health. So as you can see, we are looking at a variety of different health scenarios. And the way that we are looking at this is by creating a set of scenarios in a format of a persona, like an archetype or almost common representations of our future users of our solutions. And through those, we're trying to really understand what matters to people dealing with different complex health conditions, sometimes a lot of medications. Cast back when we showed her Maria, her medications, 15 of them, sometimes more. What we really want to do is develop a very practical representation of how we can actually make this information more accessible in a digital format. So on the right-hand side on top, you'll see the first type of developed mock-ups of what would that G-Lens solution potentially look like, and how we can actually display the medications for patients and for people like Maria. We also want to make this display easy to comprehend, to understand, and to use. So what we're also looking at are certain demonstrators. As you can see, the demonstrators on at the bottom of the screen that can help us address other aspects of medication use, like, for example, cross-border perspectives, having information in languages of your choice, in addition to the language of this country or jurisdictions where you have medicine or product acquired. And then the demonstrators of the basic G-Lens focusing, this personalization mechanism that makes this all that information, like in Maria's case, 15 medication information, a little bit more relevant. And the way we're looking at focusing is maybe mechanism of highlighting or suppressing some information when that information is not that relevant to you. And then combining all this with what we've mentioned before, this international patient summary with demographic information that patients will be sharing and will be willing to share, that actually will even more specifically tailor the information to the specific and individual circumstances and scenarios. And all of this has been developed with the insights of a Gravitate Health User Advisory Group, which you can see here in the middle, a group of wonderful patients and people who are here to advise us on development, functionality, and usability of G-Lens. And that's almost like our grounding for this solution. It's like the bedrock that we really draw from, and we build this solution together and how we want to move forward with the testing of the solution itself that you hear a little bit more about in the next presentation. So on the next slide, I also want to bring to your attention some of the live version of the G-Lens that we are actually developing. And currently we are in early stages of how this vision can actually look like. And you can see here on the right-hand side, a couple of examples of screens and displays of the live G-Lens app. And on the left-hand side, there is a list of different functionalities we are kind of working through currently, like search capabilities, focusing capabilities. We've mentioned the opportunities to change, adjust your setting, make that app a little bit more personal. And in these examples on the screen, you can see how you can actually take that paper format of the medication with its assigned content like headings and text. Some of those information contains some images, and how we can actually transform this paper format into a visual digital version of this. And then on top of that information that you take directly from the leaflet, how we can make that information really usable and relevant. And that is where the focus leaflet will come in, that focusing mechanism that specifically looks at information that is relevant to you. And with this in mind, I really I've got the greatest of pleasures to introduce our next speaker, who will tell you a little bit more about how all this scenario plays out in real life in terms of testing with different user groups and testing scenarios in order to drive this higher adherence and to optimize benefits at the end of the day for patients like Maria. And with this, I have got a great pleasure to hand off to my colleague, Lena.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to follow up on what Viola has been talking about and showing you that we are doing in the Gravitate Health project. But in this session, we are focusing on the testing of the G-Lens and the patient engagement, and I will walk you through how we have done the patient engagement testing in the MVPs so far in this project. So just as a background, Viola said a little bit about the user advisory group and the ecosystems, but we have had patient and user engagement through these two groups specifically within our project. And the user advisory group represent patients, health professionals, citizens, and consumers. And there are currently 17 participants that meets on a regular basis. And the ecosystems represent diverse stakeholders, including healthcare providers, technology developers, researchers, policymakers, patients, and entrepreneurs. And within Gravitate Health, we are connected to 11 worldwide ecosystems. There are 5 within the EU and 6 outside of the EU. So how have we tried to engage with these groups? We have asked them to advise on development, on the functionality and the usability of the G-Lens. And we have also asked them to engage in the MVP iterations and in the mockups. So next slide, please. So this is the MVP roadmap. Here you can see that the user advisory group was involved in the first iteration of the MVP1. This was done in 2023, in early 23. And we have also, as you can see, with all of the dots later on, we have several testing scenarios in different countries that would test the G-Lens solution with different patient groups. So we don't only have the user advisory group and the consortium members, but we also have specific testing scenarios within different countries and different patient groups. And they are divided into 2 groups. You have testing scenarios that will test with the G-Lens app, and you also have testing scenarios that will test the G-Lens functionality within their own front ends. And before we wanted to start with the testing with real patients, we wanted a pre-MVP2 testing, the second iteration of testing. So then we invited the user advisory group again, but here we also managed to get the ecosystems involved and also a lot of consortium members to test this MVP. And we did that in December 23 and January 24. Just to get a check on, are we on the right track? Do we need to do some changes before we are starting with the real MVP2? And following the MVP2 pre-testing phase, the testing scenarios has really been gearing up to undertake a more complete MVP2 testing. And some will test with real patients and synthetic data, and some will test with real patients and their own data. And not all the testing scenarios are preparing to go to MVP3 and do a larger scale testing, but those that do are planning testing with patients and their own data. And as you can see, I have placed the user advisory group and the ecosystems kind of on the bottom of the MVP3, because we would like to engage the user advisory group and the ecosystems, but we haven't really decided on how to do it yet. But we hope to get the patient and user perspectives included in that testing as well. So if you go to the next slide, please. So what was the MVP1 and the MVP2? We that are in the project, we kind of know all these terms, and we know what the MVP1 means, and we know what the MVP2 means, but you might not do that. So for the MVP1, the first testing, the app only consisted of electronic patient information for 2 medications. But in MVP2, the app was populated with information about 2 fictional users. We had Pedro and we had Alicia. And we had synthetic medical information for those fictional users. And we also had the electronic product informations, the EPI, for the fictional users' conditions. And of course, this was not linked to any personal data, not for MVP1 and not for MVP2. It was all synthetic data. And what we had focused on and what we did test was the usability and accessibility of the information within the app, and also the user satisfaction. Thank you. Okay, so I will not bore you with a lot of numbers, but it is good to have some visibility on what the usability seen from the user perspective. So we found that the testers in the MVP1 were impressed by the app's potential. So you can see by the yellow color on the MVP1 picture that 70% scored the app as highly usable. However, when we came to MVP2, they expected a more ready-to-use app. And remember, this is the pre-MVP2, not the full-scale MVP2. So as you can see here, the score dropped to 17% in the highly usable group, and also we got a lot more larger score in the marginally usable group compared to the MVP1. But we did get some focus group interviews and some qualitative data here as well. So we know that they liked the functions of focusing and applying lenses. We know they liked the tailored experience, but unfortunately, they did not see the added value yet due to basic functionality. So if you go to the next slide, I'm going to show you some example of functionality issues within the MVP1. The content was displayed clearly, as you can see, but some of the information was missing on the first picture. You can see within the red box that it says, do not use Humalog Mix 50 if you, and that doesn't kind of give you any information. But the content was easily solved by the technical teams. So the next picture you see, you have the full information. And in MVP2, you can see from the first picture that the highlighted text was initially not possible to see when you had switched the settings to dark mode, but that is also some quick fixes. And also in the second picture, you can see that you have a lot of lenses to choose from, and the testers wonder why you had to apply lenses on and off at the leaflet level and not based on you as a patient. So why would a male get the pregnancy lens, for example? So they wanted it to be based on themselves as a patient. And if it, no, sorry, in the testing, but this was really easy to fix. But in the next slides, I will show some mock-ups. And here you can see that the user advisory group got this as a mock-up. This is an example of how we could do it. And the questions they got to review was we want to remove the burden of selecting lenses in the EPI. This was from the technical team. So they kind of spelled it out. What do we want? What do you want you to think about, and how do you want it? And they said, we want it to be done in the settings, and then it will be applied for every EPI. So does this make sense? And the testers from the user advisory group, based on the feedback, they said, yes, this makes sense. We want to apply the lenses in the setting, and this is also in line with what we got from the pre-MVP2. So the mockups are further refined. And then we have 3 pictures of the mockups for the next iteration. So please note that these are not the fully developed app. It's just an example of how we can do this. So based on the feedback, the technical teams are working to add a disclaimer that explains why some information is highlighted or suppressed, and also giving you the how to do if you want all of the information anyway. And they are also working on highlighting the recommendations on how to take the medication so that this is on top, so it's not easily missed. And they are also working on adding explanation to difficult words. So a lot of work is going into developing the app, and they are really taking the feedback seriously and doing the changes based on the previous MVPs. So where are we now? What have we learned from the user patient engagement so far? So if you look at the key messages, we really see that we need the patient and user perspectives during the development to address what's important from a non-technical viewpoint. We need the input to see what's understandable. Can the patient understand this? Do they know why we're doing it? And they can then suggest improvements on the settings. And it's also useful to avoid setting that doesn't make sense from a patient and user perspective, even though it's possible to do. For a lot of things are possible to do. And we also get the patient and user expectations of an app nowadays, because the app development is kind of going and going and going, and we need to be on top of the recent app development. And what do we feel that we have gained with the inclusion of the user advisory group and the ecosystems? We think that they really provide the real world context from different parts of the world, since we have ecosystems all over the world, and we have user advisory group members from all over Europe. And we get the real-time feedback that we want in the development phase, because we can do the iterations and we can do the mockups, and then we can get easy feedback. And also we need to be involved to create awareness of the Gravitate Health approach in the wider community. You can sell it to the world. You can say, oh, I've heard about this. Have you seen? What do you think about? So they really help us advocate for adoption of the Gravitate Health approach and our solutions. So we are eager to kind of tailor the patient engagement strategies in the testing phases, and we are looking forward to see how we can do this also for the rest of the project. So thank you. I don't know, Deepak, if you have any initial comments. We have a maximum of 3 minutes to sum up.
3 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think it's very helpful, and I think what I can certainly echo from you is that we have really valued the user advisory group patients. I think we've benefited not only from their wisdom, but actually their enthusiasm, because we have sometimes been a bit demanding on asking them to help us a lot. And I think I'd like to echo your gratitude to them for the effort they've put in and how much we valued it. But I wanted to ask you one question. I mean, you showed a pair of pie charts, and it looked as if superficially we'd gone downhill, that there was less yellow in the second circle than the first one. And you did explain a bit about why that was. But we are then left with a challenge of interpretation that we have to get right, which is when you give somebody a test version of a software to play with and have a look at, you're kind of asking them really 2 questions. One is, if this was working really well, have we got the right idea? Is this going to be useful to you when it's working well? And then the second question is, does this actual version we've given you work well, or is it full of bugs and disappointing? And it's can be difficult for users to distinguish the two things. So that they can say, yes, what you want to achieve is great, but you haven't done it very well yet. Go back to the engineering team and fix the problems, and then we'll love it a lot. Did you feel with the users that they were struggling with differentiating those two things?
No, not really. They were
Good.
They were talking when they were doing the questionnaires. I think they were focusing on the technical aspects and how are apps nowadays and what did they expect. But when we talked to them and listened to what they had to say, they were really involved in the development. They liked it. They wanted it. They were just wanted more. They want us to develop more. So we are on the right track. And I don't think we disappointed anybody. They were just
That's good
eager to get more. So on that, I think we will.
Thank you, Lena.
Yeah. Hand it back to Vincent.
Thank you so much, Lena, Deepak, and Viola. Great presentations. I hope they gave everyone an overview of what Gravitate Health tries to achieve and how we're going about it. So now let's dive into the workshops. If we move to the next slide, you'll see again the 3 breakout groups that we have today and the associated facilitators for each group. You will be randomly allocated, which means, unfortunately, you will not have a choice, but you will be able, depending on where you land, to support the Gravitate Health team in improving patient engagement in the real-world testing, for sustainability considerations, and in translating patient insights into technical developments directly. For the breakout sessions, we will use Group Map. On the next slide, you'll get a quick overview of what that means. We will share links with you for you to log into the Group Map. You will only have to enter your email address and then directly access the Group Map. There you will have the chance to add in your insights and ideas, comments and recommendations directly. And so having that said, we will have hopefully a lively discussion in each of the breakout groups, and I'll let my colleague move us now into the different breakout groups.
What nags me a little bit. Oh, okay. I wondered if the recording had stopped because we'd wandered into censorship territory, but it's probably a technical glitch. No, the reason I'm asking is because the risk with patient engagement is that we will attract in patients who are willing and capable to give us easy help. But such lovely patients probably are quite capable of reading that tiny, flimsy, microscopically written, indigestible paper as well, because you're smart, motivated people. The very patient groups who will struggle with that bit of paper might be the very patients we could help best, but they may not volunteer to be part of any of our testing. So I just, that feels to me a bit paradoxically frustrating, and I don't know how to crack that.
I think that's the same for pretty much anything that's within the realms of anything development like this. Anybody who's developing tools or treatments, how can you actually get them to take part? I mean, I run an organization, but not a disease-specific organization. I have a completely different outlook for what I do. And I support all stakeholders. I support everything that you're doing. But even I struggle sometimes to get other communities to latch onto an idea that somebody's come to me, you know, and they would like some people to answer a survey, for instance, that's going to go towards developing something. Getting them to take part is really difficult. So I don't know what the answer is, and I think that it's something that's always going to be there. I mean, you've got to entice them somehow, whether you're dangling that carrot or what, reimbursement. But reimbursement, to me, I'm sorry, even that doesn't always work at enticing people in. So, I mean, how if reimbursement isn't going to work, how are you going to get them in? That's the question I always ask. Because it's not always about money, is it? It's not always about compensation. A lot of people just don't like their data being stored. A lot of people are still, not trustworthy of that. And they might look at this and think, hang on a minute, you're keeping hold of our data.
Yeah, I think that those are very fair points. And I think we've got to be mindful of those other trust building elements as well.
Yes, yeah.
Well said. Well said. Can I just put a little request into Charles? Because Charles, you've put a couple of chat comments in that I really like. I think they're excellent comments. I'm a little bit nervous they might get lost though. If you feel in the mood, would you be willing to copy and paste your comments onto the board? Pick any column you want, probably the middle one. But I have to say, I think your chat comments are very thoughtful.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't like interrupting people, so sorry I didn't speak out loud. Yeah, I think your challenges are going to be finding the right people, and I think it's really important to distinguish between people who are those lay patients compared to those kind of patient advocates who are quite au fait with perhaps having done it before. It's going to be those lay people that you're going to find difficult to communicate with. And I think the idea of patient and public involvement, certainly from what I've been in, is that you need to go through those trusted organizations to reach those people. So they should be doing the work for you. And by getting those trust of those organizations, the people and the lay people should trust those kind of groups. And that's probably a better route for you. So.
I agree. And it's how we work. It's how we operate. We all support each other. So, I mean, we're all shaking the hands of each other as organizations and keeping everybody in the loop. I mean, that's how we operate as patient communities anyway. That's how it tends to work. It does here anyway. I can't speak for everywhere across the globe because I'm not sitting everywhere in the globe. But for here, yeah, we work as a giant network. You're not just looking at one network when you speak to one patient community. You're speaking to an abundance of communities because we all knock heels with each other across different disease areas as well. So it's not just, one disease area. It's quite vast.
Yeah, and also
that makes sense.
Yeah, and also taking into account that we are doing digital solutions, and we need to make sure that the digital solutions are available for most of the users that are going to use it. And how can we make that happen when we don't know the digital literacy of people? Are we managing to get it on the right level so it's not too difficult, but it's also not so easy that I don't want to use this because it's just self-explanatory. I knew this before. So that's a balance as well between when we are trying to kind of do something on a digital platform. Do you have any experience with patients testing digital solutions and not managing, and what the strategies were to kind of get them on board? Anybody? Because I know that for the testing scenario in Norway, we are at least going to ask about their digital health literacy level to kind of understand, are they really high on the digital literacy level, or are they low? Are we managing to get the right people or the right patient to test?
Yeah, I think it's certainly important that you do some screening identification, the kind of levels of competency. Again, I think if somebody's competent enough to use an email address, for example, they're probably going to be accessible enough to be able to test something on a web platform. So that could be one of your screening things. I was also just thinking, I know it's a digital solution, but whether you can supplement it with other focus groups that might be more face-to-face, that, you might not get direct user testing experience, but you may get obviously additional feedback from people. So yeah, maybe just consider non-electronic methods as well.
I think I wrote something about focus groups, regular focus groups, and they can be online or they can be virtual or in person, but I agree, in person sometimes can add something else as well. I mean, we had an in-person meeting last week to go through a platform that we're building, for instance, and sometimes it's easier to be in person to discuss certain elements of that than when you're just over, like this on Zoom. Because I don't know,
agree.
don't ask me why, but yeah.
Sometimes watching what people do can be very helpful. You know, in addition to seeing the output of what we do, being in the room helps you appreciate if there is a struggle to find and search for the thing that you're trying to do that goes beyond how long did it take you to do it, you know. So agree. I think some sort of more live version, whether it's an expanded virtual setting where you can observe people versus an in-person.
I think the in-person can offer a lot of opportunities to make the engagement a bit fun as well. So, for example, you could imagine, well, I don't know, Elena, I will put that suggestion to us to think about with our colleagues downstream, but we go to a physical conference, like a number of patient organizations have events. We have a little Gravitate Health booth in the exhibition area, and we have a quiz where we say, we've got, 5 questions about medication. We want to give you the app, pick it up. You've got, 2 minutes, and let's see how many of these questions you can answer. And that tells us not how skillful the individual is, but how intuitive has our tool become, that people can look up that stuff quickly in real time. And, I mean, there are ways you can make it fun rather than saying, please really look at this app and fill in a questionnaire.
I agree.
Yeah, that was a really good idea. Just make it a bit more playful, and we could.
Yeah, playful. That's a good word. Yeah.
And we are going to participate with the Gravitate Health booth at the PEOF in Italy in May. So I will.
Oh yes,
I'm going to be there.
Right.
I will for sure try to make some fun questions.
Good.
I'm going to hold you to that.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
Well, maybe one or two of you will put a little note in the chat to say, yes, I'm happy to help Lena to create a fun version of this.
Yeah.
Help her to make a quiz.
My brain's already struggling with which tent it needs to be sitting in with those sessions at the venue. I've already asked for a cloning machine.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. But I think it's a good idea. Make it more playful, do it fun, engage in a different way, because as Deepak said, if you're just going to say, look at this medication, what did you think? Did you find what you were looking for? Or we could rather say, okay, in this particular app, you are a male at some age and you are going to look at this medication. Please find.
Yeah. Well, it can be 2 or 3 things. Like you're on these 3 medications. You're going to book a hotel for a week. Do you need a hotel with a mini fridge? Yes or no?
Yeah.
And they've got to look at their meds and say, what's the storage requirements? Oh, this one has to be kept refrigerated. I better have a hotel with a mini fridge. Yeah. It's just a quick way to give people something fun to look up.
Yeah, or
it just reminded me of a very funny story that Daniel Scriver told actually last time about the mini fridge and about his medications coming and them being sorry. Yeah. And because at first I thought, oh, is that a mini fridge? Is that where we're going to keep our sandwiches? And then I realized that you were talking about medicines. It's that time of day. Just ignore me.
Sorry. Well, I think in the context of the booth and the Gravitate app stand, I think the people might turn up and realize we're not asking about storage of sandwiches. We're asking about your medicines.
No, but I've already been at 2 webinars before this one, and my brain's just fried, I think.
Yeah.
So once this show is on the road, and it's available, perhaps it's available in a conventional form with a small number of accessibility features, but the voice-enabled version hasn't yet been made because we haven't yet got funding for that, etc. So it's not perfect, but there's at least a sensible, usable, correct version available. How do you think the vast majority of patients will pick it up? and discover that it's useful. And there are some suggestions in the Blue Zone already. Do you think patient communities are the right way forward? Recommended by patients in patients' communities, it says.
I think partnerships with patient communities is the way forward, really. I mean, it's what it's the approach that many would take. Looking at communities, for instance, where they do have a high level need of multiple medications. Look at, are you looking into specific disease areas that rely on that? I mean, I'm speaking from personal experience, but anybody with any form of musculoskeletal condition is on a multitude of pills and treatments.
Yes, yeah, you're right. 2 or 3 at least. And some of those have interactions with each other. It's slightly more tricky. Yeah, quite right.
I am actually classed as complex but unique when it comes to health. So
that's a compliment, I'm sure.
At the end of the day, oh well, it was, yeah. But anybody with that kind of thing's got a multitude. So to be able to organise all of that is something we have been asking for, because a lot of them are like very aimed towards one like therapeutic area, very specific. Then they're not as broad. From what you're making here, it seems to go a little bit beyond that, which is more in line with what people have been asking for. So I think with the right marketing strategy, I think that, to approach the right kind of communities, you could be onto something really quite good there. Just finding the right ones. And I really don't know the best way to do that, apart from arranging an event and being there, meeting them, greeting them, getting in touch with them, contacting them, speaking to them, bringing them in, going to events like you've suggested yourself, go there, go where they are.
Could you imagine patient organizations wanting to put a newsletter article in about us, maybe interviewing Lena or one of the other members of the team and saying, have an interview with in your newsletters? Would you do things like that?
They would test it and they would write a review.
Oh, write a review, test it and write. I like that. That's even better than an interview.
Yeah,
that is something
independent review.
I would suggest is to get that, is to do that. You could also check out some of the like magazines and journals that go out to patients as well. Specific ones that are out there, not bloggers per se, but proper, like I'm going to say Rare Revolution magazine, for instance. They target the rare disease communities, and they have a lot of things. This is something that even they would probably like to do an installment in their magazine for. Even pharma companies. Well, I would even maybe approach Pharma Forum or some, for their magazine. They often like, stories like this. There's a lot of industry newsletters who would probably like to help you get this out there as well, is what I'm suggesting. There's quite a lot of them out there. But yes, I agree, Charles. Yeah.
Yes, I was just looking at his chat post.
Yeah, I completely agree. But how do the patients get to hear about it in the first place? I
think that the benefit of going through patient organizations, if we pick random patients up, there's a risk that we're sort of seen as marketing and pushing it. I think going to patient organizations and approaching them means that we're going through a more orthodox channel. And then the patient organization is free to decide if this is something really worth promoting to their members, or actually this is a bit of a toy, not much use. and they might tell us that, and then we need to hear that. But then they won't disseminate it, and that's fair, that's honest.
Podcasters, patient podcasters. Get them be interviewed by patient podcasters. There's any amount of those.
Right.
Yeah, I think you want both. You want all of these because those people who are connected to their trusted organizations have a lot more in the way of resources when they have their questions. It's not only neurodivergence, but also people who are less affiliated, I would say, who probably need this even more, as you said, than those people who have those strong affiliations with patient organizations, where you may have a patient navigator and you may have somebody to talk to, but who are really looking for something more like this. So I think there has to be care to make sure that this appears where the patients are looking, you know, through whatever search optimization you could possibly do, so that it appears for exploration, even if you're not part of a patient organization. But having said that, I think it is important for trusted patient organizations to be on board with this, and if they agree that this is a good thing for the community, to put it out there for the community.
Very good. Rosalind, could I ask you a complementary question based on your other hat? Because you said you're a clinician and a patient, and you've spoken mostly at the moment up to now as a patient, which is fine. I remember from a million years ago when I was a GP, that patients would sometimes discover something out there and ask my advice. Doctor, do you think I should do this? Do you think I should use that? And I'm wondering, do you think there will be a body of patients who will approach their treating clinician, maybe their GP, and say, I've heard about this Gravitate Health Solution things. Do you think is it trustworthy? Do you think the information in it's going to be reliable? Will you be cross if I use it, etc., etc.? Do you think we need to do work almost in parallel with healthcare professional organizations?
I think that would be helpful. And just for my disclaimer, I'm no longer in clinical practice. I head up global patient affairs at BioMarin.
Okay.
But I
it's
practiced for 20 years. You know.
Yeah. Well, my practice is even longer ago than you, so I'm just mentioning it more as an example.
But yes, I think that partnership between the healthcare team and the patients is where we want to bring this visibility, right? So that it's not only for the patients to bring it to the physicians, but for the physicians to know about it, so that they can look at it or have already seen it to say, this is something that I think would be useful to you. So agree.
And can I ask some of our patients in the virtual audience, if you discovered it, for example, through a patient organization leaflet or a review, are you likely to want to second check it with your clinician before you download and use it? Or would you go straight in and use it?
I'm more likely to go to the pharmacist, to be honest.
Pharmacist. Okay, good point. Very good point. Yeah. Anybody else want to come in with a view?
Yeah, I mean, I usually trust the information I receive from the patient organization that I deal with. So they provide extremely good content. And I know that the content that they provide is reviewed by healthcare professionals and patients. So yeah, usually I trust them.
Any other views? Lena, I stole the question direction away from you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sorry about that. Did you? You may have further prompts or topics you wanted to bring in. So I'm sorry if I ran away with this lovely group.
No, that's quite fine, because we have the 3 topics that you see on the screen, and we are interested in hearing your views, and any prompts is a good prompt to get the discussion going. And I think we'll have gotten a lot of good feedback from you.
Yeah.
I'm not
could I
going.
ask? Do you mind if I ask one more question? Then?
No.
If is there time? I don't know. I can't remember if we've still got time.
We will get the note when we have
we'll
5
get
minutes,
some.
I think.
Okay. I'm interested in the reimbursement by insurance remark. I mean, it's been my view, my personal opinion, that if we asked patients to pay for the app or to pay an annual license fee, it would be a disaster for two reasons. One is many people get health care routinely, either through an insurance model or through the state otherwise, and don't expect to pay for things like this. So it would be quite a shock to the system to have to put your own money into this. But secondly, it would be very biased against people on lower income or with other reasons why, but they might still be the people who most need it. So it feels like it would be inequitable as well as a bit of a shock to the system. But that is my personal opinion, and it's not worth a lot. So I'd really love to hear from you, or dear audience. What do you feel about any money from patients towards this?
No,
Unethical?
I agree with you. Well, not only it's unethical, but it's not realistic. There are thousands of digital applications out there that address the same disease, that are very fragmented. So if each of them will start to ask patients to pay, I mean, imagine. I rather think that there will be a consolidation happening, and that at least, I talk for the Swiss market, I'm in Switzerland, and that the healthcare insurers will then provide integrated applications to the patients and finance these applications. I think there is no place for isolated applications anyhow. It should be, the patients want end-to-end seamless experiences digitally, like they have already in other industries.
Muriel, thank you. You're very clear and emphatic, but it feels like you're making really great points. I would love to hear from any others would you echo what Muriel has put very clearly?
I do, but also from first-hand experience when I've gone to members within the community with similar things where I've been asked to ask them would they pay, and the answer's been no, just outright.
Okay, outright.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. No, I mean our mission is to make this work, and if we know the ground rules are that the insurance has to cover this, then that's where we position ourselves. Yeah, no.
Even when it's being put across as it'll be low cost, and everyone says it won't be low cost enough.
Okay.
I want to add, I mean, and this is specific to maybe, technology affine people, but you get nowadays already a lot of information with AI. So, I refer to ChatGPT, but not only, because there are more and more tools that are for free that leverage AI. And yeah, so more and more people are using these tools, they are for free. So why would they pay, for something that is probably a bit better, has been reviewed by healthcare professionals, clear, but still they would not pay. Yeah.
Right. Can I ask that there are a couple of bottom right hand on the screen related contributions, one about a certification scheme and one about a quality label. I don't know who put these in because I think they're anonymous, and that's fine. But did you want to come in verbally as well to elaborate on that? Whoever put those in. Well, you don't have to, but I would personally say my institute actually is quite involved in other projects dealing with health and wellness app, quality assurance and labeling. And I feel, given that this is about trustworthy medication information, you do need to know the app has been well developed and well tested. that it's not accidentally giving you the wrong info. So I'm quite supportive of that, and I think it's something else we need to take on board. And I'd just like to ask in general to our patient audience, if it was in fact a, if this app was being promoted, encouraged a use, would the presence of some certificate or label that says an independent body has checked it and tested that it works technically well and it doesn't leak your personal data onto the internet by accident, would that alter your commitment to using it? Would it strengthen your confidence, or would it not make a big difference to you?
Definitely. From my perspective, definitely.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, it always helps. But for me as a patient, what I see that the apps I use are the ones that I see the large community are using and have largely recommended, because I trust also the other patients. So I would say that's the first thing that I look at, how many people are using the app. And then I test it myself. I see, what's in there. And we didn't mention before, but maybe, for me, it's, I'm doing cancer disease, and there are lots of cancer influencers who give a very good content, very good practical tips, etc. So I rather belong to the people who are influenced by those and the patient communities, because in Switzerland, doctors don't have time to share much with you. So then you start relying on other sources of information, the patient organizations, of course, but also these patient communities and influencers.
So
Thank
we
you.
got the
Lena,
message.
we have to wrap up, do we?
Yeah, we do.
Do you have any last remarks you want to make?
I would just like to say that I have really enjoyed this discussion, and I think we have collected a lot of good points on the board, but also in the recording of this this session. So I'm looking forward to start working on the points and see how we can go forward from here, and really try to get the patients engaged and bring their opinion back to the development and to our work. Yeah, so I really appreciate it.
That's good. Could I just make a quick point, and that is that I don't know whether the chat gets saved when breakout rooms are quit. So
I wrote down the points that were in the chat.
Good, thank you. That's all right. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was going to ask if you could look after that, because I have experience in the past of running a breakout.
They don't get saved.
And the chat disappeared.
Yeah.
which made
So
me
I wrote them
cry.
down.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you.
And if there is any last minute comments from any of those that hasn't said anything, you are more than welcome. And if you don't want to say anything, that's also fine. So we are happy with all of the contributions we have gotten, and I hope that everybody is has had a good experience, and that we have learned something from each other. So we are going to do a very short wrap up of the session when we go back to the full room. So we will just say a few words. Would you like to wrap up, Deepak, or should I?
No, I think I'd like you to, if you're willing.
Okay, yeah, that's great. It's okay. It's just that we don't talk both at the same time. Yeah. So then I think we're ready to go back to the main room.
Yeah.
I think it has to happen by magic. I don't think
it happens by magic.
My colleague Matt is closing them right now.
Yeah.
Okay. I think you have to say there's no place like home 3 times.
And click your ruby slippers.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. See you in the main room.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Michael Strubin. I work for Empirica, and Vincent earlier said we're looking at the sustainability options, because at this point, of course, what we're doing here is all nice and well, The EU is paying for this research project. It's been arranged with a number of players. Many people in the consortium have been enthusiastically driving this forward, but the project will at some point come to an end, and then we need to decide, then certain decisions need to be made. And so we wanted to use this opportunity to interact with you directly. By perhaps first of all asking whether you understand what the GLens is trying to do, what we're trying to achieve here, and maybe start with a very easy question, which is for now a yes and no question. I mean, how do you think about switching patient information from product information, medicinal product information, from paper to digital? I mean, how open are you? Would you personally switch from paper to digital? What are the barriers? What are your thoughts about it? And I understand this group map feature here allows all of you to offer comments, and then to also agree with comments and give it a plus. So that would then signify that more than just one of you share it. I believe we're all working through that group map feature, but if you have any comments or questions or would like to raise anything verbally, then please feel free to unmute yourself. And I don't think we're working here with raised hands or so, but either please feel free to express yourself in writing or verbally, and then we'll find a way to capture that, because we're recording everything. I'm looking at puzzled faces, and of course I'm looking at a lot of black screens. This is great. Some of you already looking into this, that's great. Indeed, there is a barrier here in terms of digital literacy, and it's also about that matter of digital devices that people have, the sophistication that is required. You know, can apps be read? We all use smartphones that have a relatively small screen. To what extent can information be featured in a meaningful way? So we invite you to, and I'm going to try to again arrange my screens in such a way that I can follow this live, and also yeah, I think some of you are raising the need for a smooth transition. So in a sense, what does it and I think some of you have already said, yeah, can it be featured on the phone? If indeed, and I think somebody mentioned already the question whether the interactions between the medications would be adequately featured. So I think that indeed is something that we would like to build into the GLens. And the question now is when we set up this app here, will we go through a huge questionnaire where you have to put in already the types of medication that you put in, or can there already be an electronic health record that can be trusted to know all of these pieces of information? So that's also something that's an important piece that we need, an important parameter that we would need to look at. When you talk about smooth transition, perhaps we can stay for a moment on that transition. I personally, and of course all of us are sometimes patients as well, I find that it is hugely helpful if a doctor in my life supports this. So if I set up my electronic health record, it's really helpful if the doctor says to me, this is something that's a good thing to do, and we will work with you, and this helps us and help establish links with between different healthcare professionals.
I
what
see that
other transitions?
Anthony.
Yeah.
I see that
Go ahead.
Anthony has his hand up, so perhaps
Excellent,
you'd like
because
to share on it.
excellent, and I see hands as well here, so that's great, and I don't have to listen to myself talking. Anthony, please go ahead.
Yeah, so hi everybody. I'm Anthony Tutor. I'm in the UK. I'm on quite a number of meds for quite a number of different conditions, and so I put in the interactions between my meds thing. But I've also put in the features, thinking that, you know, what would be really great is if this was interoperable between GP systems in the UK. In the UK, we can log into our health record, we can log in and see our meds. I can order meds online through my GP system, and it would just be really great to, especially when there's a new medicine that I'm adding, that's being added to my list, to see how that interacts with everything else, because the data in the UK is that 1 in 10 prescriptions written in general practice have some kind of error. Now, they may not cause a harm, but there might be an error. And a lot of these errors are flagged up by patients and by pharmacists. So something whereby this system not only gives me the information in a very legible way that, you know, my issue with the patient information leaflets at the moment is it's all about the company not being sued rather than actually about informing the patient, you know, because it's kind of like there's about 60,000 different interactions and side effects that a drug might cause, and death. And as a patient, how are you meant to, assimilate that? And a really good example of that is just my brown asthma inhaler that I was given years ago caused me to get oral thrush. Now, it said on the leaflet, might get oral thrush. The pharmacist had said, might get oral thrush. No one had told me what the symptom for oral thrush was. And so I didn't realize that when I got a sore throat and a sore mouth, it could be oral thrush. So I lived with these symptoms for several days until I went to a pharmacist who said, you've got oral thrush. And if the leaflet had actually said oral thrush, sore mouth, I'd have been like, that's all it needed to say was sore mouth. It just needed to give me what it felt like to have that. And that's my problem with the leaflets, and the writing's tiny and everything else that's been said. But I also think that this could be so much more about improving patient safety, improving adherence to medicines and treatments, and that actually these could interact with general practice systems, and also with apps like MedSafe. I don't know if you've come across MedSafe, but I use it. It's an app that reminds me when to take my meds. It logs all my meds that I've taken, especially my pain meds. I can add medications to it. MedSafe is kind of already doing some of what this is doing, so it would be really good to look at MedSafe.
MedSafe, we're going to take a look at that, and I'm making a note for this. And of course, all of this we're going to be, and the team is going to prepare a report. So this is all going to be written up. So this is your moment to really make a contribution to the development of this. In defense of and I'm neutral here. I work for private research organization in Germany. We work with, of course, the pharmaceutical industry, and yes, of course, there's a huge concern for being for maybe getting sued or so for compliance. The other thing, of course, is that all of this information that you're getting with your medicine is very tightly regulated. So there may be a very good reason why oral thrush, and I've not heard that term either, but there may be a very good reason why that term was not included. It may not have been just because of fear of compliance, so it may have just been because the rules are tight. I see that this is really populating very quickly, so I would like to invite you to keep unmuting yourself and to contribute. I mean, the things that we really want to know here is, and you've already started populating what features of a G-Lens would be particularly important to you. Somebody already mentioned MedSafe, and maybe it's been you, Anthony. And if not, please feel free to rank that up, give it a thumbs up. Read aloud capability, simple leaflets, getting information in better, easier to understand ways. The read aloud ability, that is something that I hadn't thought of, but that's certainly something that we need to take on board. And of course, with the rise of AI and voice recognition and voice translation capabilities. I think that's something that would be an easy feature to add. The other item that we really were interested in as well is this, you know, if this G-Lens is going to be incorporated or is going to be added or it comes with the medication. So are there special concerns here? Regulatory certification is something that some of you said, and of course a concern for patient safety. Yes, it should make your life easier than it is today. That's the point. We want to make, we want to transform. You all saw the slide earlier with Marie, the patient, and the huge piece of information with densely, with dense print. We want to convert this into easy to understand formats. That's one of the key features of the of digitizing that information. I see some of you listening in and contributing. I'd be very happy to use this moment here to also have direct interactions. So if any of you would be interested in adding anything or unmuting yourself, please, this is your moment to do so. Götz, is there anything that you would like to add or any questions that you would like to
yes,
pose?
Michael, actually, it's I'm just reading through. I think people also needed a bit of time to digest the questions and kind of write down. And it's really nice and aligned, actually, all these three questions, especially like the second and third kind of complementary. Yes, like they want some user functionalities, but then does all of those user functionalities are enough for them to use it? No, because that needs to come with the trust on it. Even if it's the best solution, we come up with the best user interface with the functional requirements that covers multiple different communities, it still needs to have certain aspects that are clearly, transparently communicated so that it's trustworthy to use. So it's really nice to see the linkage between them. And also the regulatory certification is something we've been recently talking a lot as well. This certification scheme seems to be something that's coming up more. Of course, making life easier, something I can trust and makes my life easier in a digital solution is great.
Perhaps,
yeah, go ahead, Vincent.
Perhaps we can zoom into one of the comments here that was also liked a couple of times, personalization as a G-Lens feature. And I'd be interested to learn what type of personalization you are thinking about. What would be important to you to be able to say, yes, this solution allows me to look at my the information that is relevant to me and my condition or my conditions.
Yeah, I think I initially wrote that. So it's more about, yeah, if you have I think it's very closely linked to pre-existing conditions. If you have a pre-existing condition, or I thought the example that was already in the app, you know, you're pregnant, that's something that's just temporary. I think it's very relevant that you can put these metrics in, because it's not usually at the top of your usual paper information leaflet. You have to find all the different languages and go to the section that really applies to you, or it might not have anything on your pre-existing condition because it's just rare or not so common. I mean, I think pregnancy, for example, is relatively common, but other things might not be.
This is it's really interesting. The pregnancy example is a really good one, because we were trying to think about exactly about this example a couple of months ago. How would you translate this into an algorithm? I mean, because very often pregnancy is something that you may not even be aware of, at least during the first weeks or so, during the first trimester. So who do you include? Who do you exclude? Do you include in an algorithm all women? Quickly you then end into what is a woman of childbearing age and so forth. So we needed to think about this very carefully, also because of course there are certain limitations of privacy that we need to pay attention to. We can't make assumption. It has to be a relatively simple algorithm, but personalization is important.
Apologies
yes, go ahead.
for interrupting you, but isn't it the user that sort of, the way I saw it is like you basically select your filters, your personalization, whatever. And then, well, if, yeah, of course, there's always, you know, let's stay with the pregnancy example. If there's a period where you don't know, but, you know, usually you find out at some point. And then you just select that filter. If it applies to you, or all of a sudden, I don't know, you're diagnosed with diabetes, whatever it may be, then you just auto manage those filters. I wouldn't expect the app. In fact, I would probably think that's a bit creepy if the app knew before me that I was pregnant. But yeah, I don't know if that's what you meant, because I thought you just sort of put your own parameters in the app, but maybe I misunderstood that.
It's no, I think thank you very much for raising this, because this is indeed an important conversation. I don't want to get too much into this rabbit hole, but there is a debate within the Gravitated Health Project. Should we put the burden on giving us this information to the patient, or to the user, or should we try to extract that information out of a personal health record or a GP record, or an electronic health record, any kind of source of information that may be outdated. And pregnancy, again, is an important one, because it changes. Once you have a pre-existing condition, you have that condition, and you will be with it for quite your entire life, maybe even. Whereas pregnancy could be could be something that would need to be adjusted every so often. And that may be something where a patient like you, a user like you, would like to actually have the control over whether I select that filter or not. So that's an important piece of feedback. Because we also, on the other hand, we don't want to put too much of a burden on the user, that every time they open it, they have to go through the same filters again. That's not something that we're trying to do. We're trying to create the app in such a way that you select it, and then maybe every 6 months or so you review your settings, but that you stay with your settings for a little while. Those are all important questions that we need to consider. Another question that goes into, and this is again from a sustainability point of view, at the end of the day and going forward, you know, who pays for this? There are certain models that we could think of where a national health system or so could pay for this if we show them that this actually improves compliance, makes people's lives better, makes people's health status better. Then maybe somebody like an NHS could pay for this. Another model could be that we put the burden on the industry, and they would probably be interested in perhaps trying to get something in return. I'm thinking about this because one of you suggested that you want a help button. You know, if the G-Lens has a function or something that is misunderstood, who do I call? Who do you want to call? Is it your doctor? Is it a medical professional? Is it somebody in a call center that may be run by the industry? To what extent would you be open to perhaps having a direct relationship with the manufacturer of some of your medications? And I see that there is while I'm thinking about this aloud, I see some comments in the chat here. No, this is not relevant to that. But who is going to call? Who is going to answer this help call?
We have Mark's hand up. There is a hand up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mark, go ahead. Sorry, I missed that. Mark, go ahead.
Interesting that you say medication adherence and the industry pay for this. I come from industry for 22 years, but I'm also part of the Global Medication Adherence Alliance that's been going on for more than 15 years. And we realized that, let's say, for the high cost medicine, fantastic patient support programs are created. But for the high volume and low cost medicines, there often are not patient support program. And actually there the need is the greatest. So pharma does do patient support programs for medication adherence, but I think there's a role for the EU, or at least at a governmental local country level, a need for countries to start focusing on medication adherence as well. Because if patients stop taking their medications, the first 2-3 months, you do lower some of your costs. But then after 3 months, there's often an incident. There needs to be a checkup. There might be higher costs involved. It's not good for the patients. It's not good for government. So I think there is a role for medication adherence from a governmental side.
Thank you, Mark. And I think that's a really important point. And that's actually I saw in a different context a year or 2 years ago, and this was more from a medical device company, where they showed a proven record when you are remotely monitored. So when there is something, when your adherence to using a medical device is that when there is some sort of remote monitoring, that it improves immediately adherence to the treatment by substantial amounts of money. I think in the case though of I think it was the French National Health System, I think in the end it still wouldn't cover it. But I think it's an important case and needs to be revisited again and again and again.
Yeah, there's plenty of evidence these days that medication adherence overall will reduce the total healthcare cost.
Yeah. Good point.
Michael, sorry for interrupting you, but I just wanted to follow up on the comment in the chat, actually, because around this personalization discussion and the various comments on the group map around personalization and having the power as a user to select their own parameters or be able to control the data themselves. The comment from Sally says that there could be a risk of mistakes being made while inputting. And I'm wondering, as Sally does, if there is any strategies for mitigation around this particular risk. And perhaps if someone from the group has already an idea on that, they could step forward and speak to it. And otherwise, I'm sure, Michael, you'll also have an idea.
Well, I mean, the one thing at the moment we hit the digital sphere is there is always there is, of course, still the room for error, but there is the room also for more safeguards. So a patient making certain choices could always be checked. Does this make sense? Could this be an error, or could this be reviewed? Should there be an algorithm here that says, wait a second, this doesn't make sense. A patient who is this age can't have, this condition, that condition, and that condition as well. There must be a mistake. Let's double check that, or let's invite the patient to review this again. There are certain algorithms, there's certain software capabilities that could be run, AI capabilities that could be run to double check that. At the same time, digitalization may not eliminate mistakes altogether, but it may make them a whole lot less frequently. Sally, you raised your hands. Sally?
Hi. Sorry, I couldn't find the raise hand button for some reason. Thank you so much for answering that question. And I suppose what's layered behind that question is as well is I was thinking about health literacy, and also if you take the UK as an example, the average reading age within the UK is age 9, which is why I was thinking it depends on how the content of the app is written and whether it's readable, understandable, actionable, etc. But I think bearing health literacy, reading ages, etc. in mind, then I think it may be a challenge to ask people to make their own choices. And I think that's obviously, as you just said there, Michael, you know, something that needs to be taken into consideration.
Thank you. I think, yes, I completely agree with you.
This is a fantastic comment, and it also makes me think, Michael, what about the usage of this of the GLens function for underaged people?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think of this as in terms of when I look into and I have 3 small children, when I go into my electronic health record, I always get the choice here. Am I looking at this for myself or for my children? And so then it goes, it is me who has the app, and I am the carer in that regard. And I would expect, somebody mentioned grandparents before, a similar thing would go on if you were a caregiver and were to advise your elderly parent or grandparent that you have the app, you run the advice, you instruct and help your grandparent to understand the relevant information. I was just blanking out because I really wanted use Sally's point to also say to everybody, if you're looking for that hand here, it is really hidden under the reactions button. So just click on reactions, and then one of them is raise your hand. That's a little bit of an anomaly in Zoom, or quirk in Zoom that you just need to understand. I'd like to, I'm spotting a comment here that's now already gotten a couple of comments. I put my own parameters, and I'd like to understand that a little bit better. This is in the middle column for the GLens, what GLens features would be important to you. When I put my own parameters, I don't think we're going to let you decide. There's not going to be a free text field here. I think AI will probably not advance as fast as we would like it to. But what do you have in mind here regarding your own parameters here? What would you like to add here? Or is this again your own conditions here? Who's commented on this and would like to make a comment here? What do you mean? Have I just downgraded? Have I just managed to do something myself here by no, I don't think so. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, Vincent. Okay, very good. What other let's take another look at the reinsurance. And it's been discussed that we would really like to see information to be featured in the GLens that is easily understandable. One of the things that we're looking at very carefully is about including additional information that comes from trusted sources. Because of course there is the very regulated world of what is in the regulatory world called risk minimization measures. You know, the information that goes into the leaflet or additional risk minimization efforts. But then there's also trusted sources, information that could be available online, but isn't available online, you know, your mark from Facebook or so, but comes or is featured by like, for example, the Royal College of Nurses or physicians or trusted medical societies. What type of information would you consider trustworthy? Many of you come from the UK. What type of information would be considered trustworthy that you would accept to be included, that you would be included, that you would authorize us in a sense, or trust us to include in a GLens? And I see Sally raising your hand again. Thank you, Sally.
It's quite all right. I was just thinking from a UK perspective, there is the Patient Information Forum within the UK. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, which has their accreditation of the PIF-TIC, which is a kite mark for trusted health information. So it's kind of the next stage from what was the UK standards through the NHS. And I think that is starting to be seen more as, if a piece of information has got the tick on, then that can be trusted. And then I suppose it's, you know, the lens through which you are looking. So maybe, you know, as a scientist, you might look for peer-reviewed information. If you're just a member of the public, you probably don't really know what the Royal College of Nurses is. And I don't know, some people may not. But I think it's that explanation of why it's trusted as well, maybe, that would be important.
Sally, that's great. That's really helpful. And I'm going to look that up. Will I find it if I Google the Patient Information Forum? If not, or if you would like to add a link, please feel free to leave it in the chat.
I'll put it in the chat for you. No problem.
That would be really great. And if any of you have something, have contributions to that effect, what should be considered? And we agree that in that particular case, we are a European project, but these types of sources are very often national or regional. And I'm from Germany. I have my own ideas. We look at the Robert Koch Institute. You know, that was a trusted source of information during the pandemic. And I wouldn't know where to go to in the UK or in Norway or in other countries. So we'd be really interested in your information. Thanks, Sally. It's popped up now at the PIF online. I think that's going to be really useful, and so that's already worth it. Participating in this forum here. That was my win here. Good, Vincent. This is our unique opportunity to pick the brains of these wonderful people here in this call here. I'm running out of ideas here. We have pretty much all of the information that we wanted to have. Are there questions that you have for us for the Gravitate Health Project? Are there things that we have not touched on? Or do you have general questions about where we take this project in the next couple of years or so? Because this would be your moment.
I'm happy also to maybe throw in another question for our participants here.
Please do.
Because as we are approaching the last couple of years, or last year actually, of the development of this solution, and you are giving us so much input right now and here, but I would like to know if there is another way that you could imagine your ideal participation in developing this solution, health apps like this, moving forward.
I'm gonna go on mute for a moment here because I'm in a hotel and it's getting loud here. But I'll continue looking into your input here, and I'll unmute myself when I have something to say.
That's okay.
And
So, yeah,
just one thing, Vincent, I think I'm noticing today what we're doing here is just we are opening ourselves out there very new on this one, because we are just more or less kind of ready to get ourselves to the outside world and showcase what we've been working on. So most of the half of the project's work were behind the scenes. In a way, we had to cook the dishes in the kitchen. So this is a first experience for us. We're coming out there, and actually it's very important for us, and we're learning as we go on this, to get your feedback on the way we are doing this. Is it the right way? We would really like to know. Like, is that the way we should be asking your opinions, your experiences, your input? And we will definitely continue doing that further. But yeah, it's important for us to get the questions from you, as well as for us to ask you questions, so that we know your surroundings, you know, what your environment is. and how we can help each other. Of course, you helping us, but us helping you as well in that sense. And just seeing Sally's comment also, success look like for this app in the future. So maybe one thing to clarify as well, so this project is going to not produce the product itself. So that's the whole research mindset of this project in a way as well. So it's going to actually prepare the package of all the legal aspects of it, technical aspects of it, user interface of it, all the engagement materials of it together. And then it's going to be something that will be out there for actually other partners or someone future to be able to use and adopt and turn these into a real solution. So what we're working on right now is actually the concepts that are all needed to have a successful G-Lens, a functional G-Lens solution, but it's really more the cookbook that we are working on for the moment. So the success of it is, I guess, it's really relevant to the country who's going to adopt it. It's very relevant to the expectations from the developers at that stage, but I think we still have to work on what is the success criteria to be part of that kind of package.
But then who do you think is going to roll this out? Because I mean, it's all a very nice and theoretical exercise, but if it doesn't turn into reality, I would think that's a little bit frustrating for everybody who spent 5 years working on this. So, I mean, what's the realistic goal? Somebody needs to take ownership of it, I guess. And I guess it comes back to what Michael said earlier. Somebody has to pay for it, because usually that's what it's all about. So, I mean, you must have some sort of a vision, because otherwise I personally would struggle to keep going for 5 years on a project that's merely hypothetical.
Michael, would you like to take that one? Yes.
Yes, so in the sense, so this project is really exciting, but we're breaking new ground. One could also say we're driving the car as we're building it. I think Götze used a kind of a similar metaphor here, which is that we're trying to create this app here, while we're still in a world where a lot of the information out there is stuck in silos. For example, you would think that there is somewhere a database with a list of all the medications, because you want to, it was mentioned earlier, we want to avoid issues where where there is a counterindication with a different type of medication. But it turns out that these medications are not standardized. So turning it all into machine readable information requires a standardization process first. So far, there hasn't been a need for standardization. We and our project is now exerting a push here for this type of information to be standardized and to become more open source, to be more shareable, so that in future an app will be able to take this information, take information from another source and from yet another source, combine it also with your electronic, so the electronic product information, but also your personal patient summary, the information that sits in GP records. All of that information needs to be brought together. And in Europe, in UK, in many other European member states, this process is still being worked out. We just passed in Europe, or in the process of passing a major piece of legislation called the European Health Data Space, where we're trying to get this information readable and shareable, and encourage this type of information to travel across borders and to make it useful for research and information, for research and innovation. And a lot of the standardization that needs to happen now is now being created. So our project, like other projects, similar projects in other regions in the world, are now creating that kind of push for standardizing the information so that this can be digitalized. So even if at the end of the 5 years of this project, we may not be ready to have to roll out apps, the world will be much better and much more advanced because of the fact that we've been here. Yet at the same time, yeah, go ahead.
So just to build on that, I think the testing scenarios also play a great role in providing the evidence that then can be used to convince states and healthcare providers to adopt these kind of solutions and tap into the network or infrastructure that is being built that Michael has been describing.
There is also a question in the chat.
Okay.
Oh yes. Maybe Gus, I think that may be something that you could answer, right?
Yeah, that was the question about to understand participation in what on the testings of the minimum viable product. I'm supposing that's the question. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sharmila, but for that we actually used our contacts from the ecosystems that and also the patient user advisory group members that are part. And we also have some more, I think, external reviewers that were selected from the network. But from the one I know that we are very well, like equipped with were the ecosystems contributions and the user advisory group as the participants to review it. We're planning to do actually an in-person PEOF session, a booth that will be in the next month, where we will have more opportunities to have the public to be able to test part of the PEOF group. So we're trying to create more opportunities for engagement before we move to the minimum viable product version 3. So I don't know if that would answer your question.
And in case you would like to participate, what would be the best venues and routes for us to reach people like you? That would be another interesting thing to know, to broaden the web of end users and patients, people, citizens that we can consult and include in the building of the solution.
Are you able to hear me? Are you
Yes.
able to hear me? Okay, just a quick, this was more for learning what you have done, because I'm from the payer side from the US, and we're working on a lot of digital, apps here. And what I am finding is see, there are two types of engagement. One is the engagement where we want them to participate in testing it and making sure that we get some feedback from them. And there's another engagement, which is after the fact, right? When you've created an app and they are participating in it, and they're actually participating in a program. That is another engagement. So that's like definition of engagement is slightly different, but I'm assuming this is the initial engagement you're talking about. And what we have done here is we randomly select feedback from participants or customers. That's the only thing. I was just wondering if you pick and choose people, or do you randomly select those participants?
Mm-hmm. I think it's important to mention that the Gravitate Health project is a public-private partnership, and part of that partnership includes patient organizations like Gerst's organizations, the European Patient Forum, that have a vast network of patients and care partners that we can build on. So, Gerst, I don't know if you have more to add there.
Yeah, it's also indeed that's one of the things. We do not handpick them like that, but they are kind of already part of the project to understand a little bit of, give them context. So the user advisory group is part. Of course, we also introduced the whole concept to our members. So we did a webinar style consultations with the EPF members as well. So we did use a few different channels to be able to actually get feedback on the second version. What we realized is we need to do more actually, maybe smaller group ones that are outside the project as well. That's why we wanted to introduce the PEOF one to see how it goes. But definitely our network is engaged with it.
Indeed. And then for the testing scenarios, how it works is that the local partners in the different countries build on the network that they have locally. Michael, please go ahead. Sorry for interrupting.
No. I was just going to say in about a minute or so, we're going to be pulled back into the main room here. So I just wanted to, from my side, say thank you very much to all of you for participating and for joining this group here and for your feedback. And please do stay in touch. Götze, Vincent, and I will be easy to reach. And if you want to stay in touch, you'll find us. And with that, I think we're going to be automatically moved back, I think. Very soon. Thank you very much. Oh yeah,
I can only echo that. And I think that Michael, for the key takeaways, a report out that will happen in the plenary. We have had some discussions around specific topics, and I think that that it will be great to highlight them. Can I count on you in that sense?
Sure. And if any one of you would like to then contribute to this and augment what we've been discussing, please feel free. So I'll be happy to take the lead and the report out. But we will not have much time. And the main legacy, of course, will be this beautiful group map feature, which I'm going to keep in mind because I think it's really useful. So thanks very much for sharing that with us.
Hello. Hello, good evening. I was just waiting for Viola to join our group.
Okay.
But on the meantime, as you've seen, I've been a bit busy putting in already some ideas on the questions on the group map application that we have, and you see already there. The idea is that Viola and I, we are the main leads of the development team of the G-Lens application and services. And we would like to use this opportunity to for you to share directly with us your vision on what this application should look like, so that we as the engineering team lead can already try to address your biggest issues and incorporate your ideas into what we are trying to bring with this application. Right, Viola? I see you finally joined. So I just don't want to spawn all my ideas into the group map. I have already some notes. We will try to be this as interactive as possible, so that it's enjoyable for everyone. And yeah, so there are 3 questions there, basically around 3 different aspects that we think they are critical for patients to be involved with. First is about participating in the development. Of course, this has many meanings for many people, and each one of us we may be interested on different aspects of what this development is. We may be able to cooperate in different aspects. So this is basically around this conversation on how can we engage directly with you as patient representatives, and what kind of mechanisms we can implement for you to be able to participate in this experience. So I put there down an example of maybe an idea in this concept, which could be that you expect this G-Lens app to be available in the iOS marketplace, or in the Apple Store, or in the I forgot to write it down. In the Apple Store, or in the Google Store, or other marketplaces, and just we'd be able to download it. Or maybe this is not so good idea for you. Maybe you would expect an application of this stage to be more like invitation type process. So you know, or the patients that enroll into the application know that this is proof of concept, and not so really production type, ready for the world as it should. Okay. Since we are in this process of participating in the development aspect. So if you got other ideas there, just click on the plus and you can add your ideas. If you like the ideas that you see, click on the thumbs up, and that way we know and categorize what ideas, what elements could be interesting. Viola, I'm not sure if I represented this question truly. I think maybe you would like to add something to.
Alejandro, you did a beautiful job, by the way. I think we all understand the task, and it's a very exciting one, right? Because what Alejandro introduced us is that other side of the story. I guess, we are the recipient part of technology, right? We kind of come into technology when it's already done and it's already delivered. And then we think about, if I had a magic wand and I could just wave a magic wand, I would have done X, Y, Z, or I would have done it differently. And when you look back to using any healthcare apps, how many apps do you have on your phone? You think like, are they really usable? Do I really like that experience working with them or using them? And then you ask yourself, how can I make them better? So I guess our ask for you is, we really need your help to understand when we are developing, where Alejandro is developing those apps and he's involved in those engineering aspects of development. How can we help him? How can we provide our guidance, our insights, our experiences to make the apps specifically we're developing more usable and more tailored to your own individual needs? So when you think about the way that you want to communicate your ideas, how would it look like? As Alejandro was saying, are you just okay to receive let's say, a version of the app and then provide feedback on it? Would you like to actually have a chat with Alejandro prior to development? Would you like to have a live discussion and conversation with him? What do you think that might look like? And feel free to add your comment or just unmute yourself and just share with us what would your ideal conversation be like, and how would that take place? Or maybe, sorry, go on.
Please, Viola.
Oh, I just wondered also whether maybe one of you have already been involved in developing any of those applications, or maybe even be part of the Insight group.
That would be very, very interesting, of course. Maybe we can translate also the conversation to common apps that we use. Go back to Facebook, for example, and every time they change their UI, there's worldwide news about it. and people have always thoughts about whether they should be included in this worldwide UI change, user experience, and how I usually access these features, or maybe it's best if the features are left are more progressively introduced. If you think this progressive and or consultation with consent from your side, opt into the different features is preferable to just receiving the features. On the backside of that, maybe you may not know about these new features unless they were pushed on you, right? So that could be another way to look into this question on how generally the development is perceived by users.
That's a great example, by the way, Alejandro. And just looking at our comments here, I can see that you really like this idea of end-to-end participation, not just user testing. Just fabulous idea. Do we all agree that this could potentially be a good path for engagement? Or would we just feel like we're making a really good big difference through that kind of like almost direct pathway?
Just a question. By end-to-end participation, we mean that the users would be engaged in every stage of the development, or is it something I'm missing?
No, so they'll be engaged in all elements of the development. What happens, and I see this a lot, what happens when any kind of digital solution is developed, the users only get, the developers only get the users involved when it comes to testing. That's too late. You know, for instance, I had discussions with a startup who had developed it was an app for essentially for the clinical trial space. And I said, well, have you had patients involved in the concept development, in the development, the language that's being used in the app? And they said, no, we'll just get feedback once we've implemented it in the pilot. And I was just, that's too late, because you've already spent all this money. What happens if they turn around and say that actually this isn't needed and it's quite rubbish?
Yes.
And I think that's really important. It's something which often doesn't get considered, and I think is also linked to one of the other things that I've added in that column, where there needs to be true recognition of the value that patient engagement can have. And because again, I see this a lot with startups, if they do engage with patients earlier than the user testing phase, they expect patients just to do it for free. And my answer is, well, you've had lawyers involved, you've had like finance people involved. Have any of them done things for free for you? And the answer is obviously no. So why are you expecting patients to essentially be consultants to you? Why are you expecting that to be free? And that's a mindset which I see so often in digital health startups, that somehow patients should just be grateful for being asked.
As an engineer, I've done this mistake so many times. I think it is just how we engineers think about the world. Yeah. So I have to apologize on my side, because I will do this again, but I completely agree with you. It's a methodology that we usually use in these cases, which is co-creation with patients and so on. And of course, it is really, really important to have this feedback, to not feedback, we don't call it feedback, this input, this value, the description of the real problems, so we can offer real solutions. That's the key. Yeah. There are some hands raised. Maybe Sheila, you want to first?
Yeah, thank you, Alejandro. And thank you, Trishna. I'm thinking about the use of this app, and I'm thinking that some people, like, you cannot design an app for every single disease there is. There has to be a standard. However, I'm concerned about those people who are vision impaired or who have mobility issues. I guess there's going to be a voice activated option if needed. Will the caregiver also have access to it, or will the caregiver have the same app? You know, it's not just the patient, it's everybody that rotates around it. And what happens if you end up in the hospital? Will the emergency be able to access it? And where do I get this app when it will be available? Will your HCP be aware of it? I mean, there's 1,001 issues, but the one I'm most concerned about is the actual usage of it.
You've raised a lot of very, very good points, and definitely the input of caregivers, I think you wanted to emphasize as well, right? And what happens when there's circumstances the main user cannot just access it. And then we've got another hand raised, I think, Joanna.
Yeah, so sorry, I had to jump out for an urgent audit topic, but so I missed the kind of beginning of the conversation, so I just reacting to what I've heard so far, but just on the caregiver. So I'm from Merck, so representing the pharmaceutical company. We're also developing health apps, and on the caregiver topic, what we're doing is really ensuring that the caregiver can get a mirrored version of the app and do activities on behalf of the patient, because we know in many instances patients will not be able to interact with the app. It can be different phases of the journey or throughout. So we're really actually considering, in some instances, the caregiver is the main user of the app. So stretching that like further down the line, we also even want to ensure that we have that caregiver tone of voice. So we're talking to the caregiver, you're caring for somebody who is, so that they have their own profile and also can access content that is like dedicated to caregivers and that only seen by caregivers, because it can be additional burden for patients to see about caregiver suffering or caregiver topics. So so that's how we're trying to address it. And then I also want to react, because we're talking about compensation for patients. I heard that earlier, and that's a huge issue for me. But we're as a pharmaceutical company, we have lots of compliance rules on how we can compensate patients, especially in these kind of instances where it's difficult to do kind of a double-blind and market research, and you are interviewed on behalf of a company and you don't know which one. But because here we typically would like to do something where it's more, they would know who is behind it. And then it's super restricted. There's nothing I can do. It just pops out of the system. This is how much the hourly rate. And often I don't think it reflects what we're actually asking them to do, the involvement and all the precious insights we get. But my hands are tied, and I just simply cannot do anything. And this is really, I guess it's there for good reasons. We don't, it's really important as a pharmaceutical company that we're not seen as we're promoting or inducing, somebody to some kind of behavior. But yeah, just to comment on the fact that I think we're not compensating to the extent of the benefit that we're actually getting from these insights.
I just want to build on that a little bit to just ask the group, when we talk about patients or people being compensated, do you feel like there may be another ways, not just, or maybe on top of the compensations in terms of funding, that we can use to actually encourage participation? Because obviously you've already discovered it takes a lot of time and commitment, and people will have got obviously other things to do in the time that they spend with the development team. So is there any other way that we can support people, or additional way that we can support people to participate and share their insights and time? Do you think there will be another benefit?
I think some of it depends on the stakeholder group that is representing the developer. Because so if it's a pharmaceutical company, for instance, then you're working within much stricter parameters. But for instance, I've seen digital health companies say, okay, look, we've only got a limited budget. We'll be able to compensate you this amount, but when the app is developed, we'll give you free access to the app, for instance. Or we will compensate you for recruiting other people to come onto the app. And so it very much depends on the stakeholder. If it's some digital health company, then they have less restrictions around how they can work with patients. Obviously, if it's a pharma company developing an app, then you've got to still work within the obviously the patient industry guidelines. And just picking up on what you were saying, Johanna, around that disparity between the value that patients can bring and what the compensation levels are. So this is an issue with particularly some specific pharma companies where they're not recognizing that there are different types of patients, and that, you know, what the compensation is depending on what the type of engagement is. That can also differ. But what I would usually say, because I understand that it's that's something which gets done at a certain level and it has to be system wide. However, if people don't say things internally and they don't speak up about it, nothing will ever change, because otherwise it's external forces. So advocates like myself, like Sheila, like you know, all the other advocates who engage in things like PEOF, who are saying, no, this is the way that it should be. And it can be, because like peer guidance, all that, you know, it recognizes that there's different types of patients, etc. But it also has to come from within, internally. There needs to be, you know, voices raised.
And when you think about that experience itself, let's say, you know, you are already part of the process. Do you find that in itself a good experience when you're already working with teams? Would you like to change anything or add anything to that experience? Is it worth even pursuing?
As in to get the compensation levels. What are you I don't know what you're referring to.
Sure, just circling back to actually participating in those engagements, because obviously compensation is one thing, but the experience itself needs to be enjoyable in order to even pursue it.
Absolutely, and this is something that I speak about a lot in terms of so within patient advocacy, everybody talks to each other, and if they have a good experience, so within the patient advocacy like space, there are companies and their names frequently come up because they do offer really great experiences of working with patients. And then there's others and their names frequently come up where actually the experience isn't so great. And so it's that understanding that, yeah, if somebody has a good experience and they feel valued and it's been and they feel like they've been listened to and their needs have been taken into account, and you know, they've had you know, they've understood and been involved end to end, and all of that makes for a good experience. And then they go out and, you know, they'll tell other advocates, yeah, that was a great organization to work with. And so I think that, and also they'll want to work with that organization again. if they have a poor experience, they'll say, you know what, it's not worth my time, my energy, my mental capacity. Because we have to remember that as, you know, as patient advocates, we're all living with health conditions. And, you know, so actually life just day to day can be challenging. So, you know, many of us will start to think, well, why do we need the extra stress if the experience wasn't good? And I think that's something which many organizations, they don't, I don't think that they necessarily put enough emphasis on, is making sure that people are happy with their engagement.
And which factors, just following on from there, which factors do you and the group consider one of the most important for that experience to be really good?
I think a really important factor is to feel like you've been listened to and your needs have been taken into account, and that you feel like you have an equal seat at the table. I think those are particularly, and then also sort of practicalities around accessibility, not being made to feel like you're being a bit of a pain because you need to ask, for instance, for something virtual when it's an in-person meeting, or you need to have meetings made at later on in the day because mornings aren't so good for you. All of those kinds of things, which I talk about as being it's the human element of things. So I think that is a really important part, and then also being given the support and creating an environment where you feel comfortable being able to be open and share your insights and share your opinions and thoughts.
Thank you so much. And we've got some hands raised. Sheila, would you like to go first? And then Joanna will follow.
Yeah, I'll try to be really short. One thing that I really think is important is to give closure to the project and not just thank the patients or the participants, but you know, for example, if you are going to present this, or you're going to have a publication, or you're going to have a poster about it, those that you would like to represent and help present the object, that could be a nice way to show appreciation for it. It's not just the money, it's actually, you know, feeling really valued during and also after, which can be in different ways. And that's all I have to say for now.
You know, you said it beautifully, and I really will listen to Joanna, but I will circle back to you for another question, because that has sparked a lot of ideas. Joanna, do you want to comment? And then
well, I have actually a question. I was wondering if you know, your thoughts on if it's appropriate to have co-creation sessions with patients and HCPs physicians together. It's a bit of a taboo in my organization. They don't want us to do that, but I really see the need for it, because what we're trying to do is kind of improve the conversations between patients and HCPs in relation to the treatment that we're proposing, and not come between. So both perspectives are really important, and I would love to have them come together and create something together. And so I just wanted to hear if somebody has an experience with that, and positive or negative, or, you know, if that's something that can be recommended.
that's an awesome aspect to bring up to this conversation, because we've got here patients and caregivers, right? But we don't have that other element of healthcare providers, doctors. What does the group think?
Absolutely, because you can't have one without the other. And at the end of the day, practically in real life, it's a joint decision. There is no point in developing something that HCPs think is absolutely fantastic, but actually a patient doesn't. Or there's no point in developing something which a patient thinks is absolutely fantastic, but the HCP isn't on board with it, and so won't prescribe it or won't be able to offer the support. Johanna, can you just remind me, because you said Merck, is that Merck KGaA Darmstadt?
Yes.
Yeah. So have you heard of MS in the 21st century?
Yeah, I do.
So
But I wasn't.
Yeah, so MS in the 21st century, that's a Merck-sponsored initiative,
Yeah.
that's HCPs and patient advocates together.
Together.
And we
Okay.
Yeah, and we co-create solutions. So
Oh, good.
it can be done, and Merck has done
Yeah.
it.
I need to talk to Tony then. Yeah.
So the person to talk to, if you wanted to find out more, so internally is Helen Gray.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. What a productive meeting. We already found the answers and made connections. I love it. So just circling back to the question around the closure of the project, being participants during and after, and then also feeling like I've been listened to. Do you feel like you need to see something really tangible? Because how do you know what's that feeling that you want to get when you think like, yes, I've been listened to? What evidence do you need to have that actually has happened?
Well, I can tell you based on conferences I've been to and spoken to, there is a facial expression that people have when it suddenly clicks. When we say something, and I've seen it over and over again, and it's like, aha, and that is just, there's no price for that. And if you look at more concretely, I think it's when you suggest something in the project and then it is actually, let's say, put into practice or developed further, that is proof that the idea and your experience has value to the point that they're willing to implement it. And there are many factors and there are many ideas, but I think those are two important aspects. I don't know if Tricia has other ideas, but those are the two that I can think of.
I love this. Sometimes just want to say, acknowledge that this is so simple. You just said, oh, just simple, aha. Wonderful.
Yeah. I would say another thing which is really important, again, which can sometimes be overlooked, is communicating where insights haven't been applied or haven't been implementing, communicating what the rationale has been behind not doing so. I think that's just as important for people to understand as it is for them to be able to see, as Sheila said, see that things have been implemented.
Yeah, you're right. And it's almost like it sounds like everybody understands in a room the importance of it, but then when team just disperse and go to do their own thing, they kind of thinking like, what was that idea about, right? They can't just understand how important that was while the conversation was happening. So how would you follow up that through? Would you have a series of check-ins, or would you yourself like draw some ideas and be like more hands-on involved? What do you think?
A series of check-ins, and also so when the project has been concluded, like a wrap-up meeting, but then also have a longer term relationship. So I've been involved in some projects where initially things were great, things were implemented, and the solutions were launched, etc., etc. And then 2 or 3 years later, for whatever reason, actually it was withdrawn, it wasn't given funding anymore. And what I really appreciated was being informed about it, because otherwise, you just think, oh gosh, where's that disappeared to? But also the fact that the organizations that were involved in its development were very open about the reasons why. So if it was a budget thing, they said, look, we're not being given funding anymore. And so I think that's also really important for patients, and to be able to understand that actually, pharma has lots of money, but funding might still be an issue because of the way that the funding funnels work, etc. It might be that actually once the solution was implemented in the real world setting, it didn't have a great uptake, for instance. So actually being very transparent about those reasons why something might initially be applied or implemented, and then 2 or 3 years down the line it gets shelved, is really important. Because I remember a lot of the projects that I participate in, it's not just that you just do it and then you just forget about it. I like knowing how it's doing 2-3 years down the line.
And that perfectly aligns what we've heard earlier around being involved during and after, right? It's that after that you've also mentioned. And I am also conscious that we've got Susan, Nancy, and I think we've got Katrina on our call. Wonder whether we should pause and see whether there's anything you would like to add as well, anything that comes to your mind. And feel free to unmute yourself, by the way, if you muted.
I just think you raised really good points so far. I don't have anything else to add.
Thank you, Nancy.
Things just have to be put into action. That's the
yes, that's the hard bit.
That's the fun. That's the fun part. That's the fun part.
That's definitely fun. So I really wanted to come back to what Joanna was saying around those taboos, right? Because that was an interesting conversation. Do you feel like when you are running the sessions and you've got the development teams and maybe caregivers at the best, or if you're lucky, a doctor in a room, a healthcare professional, do you think there is someone else missing? Or do you think there are other people that needed to be there as well?
I mean, depending on the app and the solution, sometimes the regulators, obviously depending on the solution.
I mean, that's really clever point, because when you think about, you talked about that sometimes, alongside the life cycle of the project, something goes wrong. And actually that might be one of the factors when not considered early in a project that could be potential blocker.
Yeah.
Moving on. Alejandro, any more interesting points you've heard you want to circle back to?
Just to comment, because I'm very interested, and in fact it's something that we always have in our roadmap, is accessibility, for sure. We also discussed internally, I feel almost defending myself about on these ideas, but basically to assure that these ideas were already on top of the table, and it's great that on your side we agree on them. So we have been debating about whether this process should come from patients and so on. But I think this is one of those cases where both sides already are aligned. And we see that in cases like accessibility, delegation is this part about having caregivers or other roles being able to access the data in a delegated form. I'm writing down I'm very interested in this new idea, and I'm trying to have that face expression. The content for caregivers. So in our and maybe in a second or so we can discuss the features of the application itself. But we are implementing this feature for providing additional resources for patients, not just the electronic product information, but documents, videos, access to advocacy groups, patient organizations, specific applications for your condition, all those kinds of things. And it's true, and this is where the aha moment comes, that our thinking was so narrow as to provide that content only for patients. And yeah, now, yeah, exactly. Thinking about incorporating caregivers into this process might broaden our mind's horizon and include them could be extremely interesting. So just try to have that aha moment with you guys.
Great point, Alejandro. And we've got Susan as well. And I know, Sheila, you've been so patient. Let's give maybe Susan a voice and then we'll circle back to you.
Oh, thank you so much. I just wanted to say this has been a really interesting conversation. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. I am a caregiver to my mother who has 5 different chronic illnesses going on at the same time. And I am the one who handles all of her doctor's appointments. I'm the one who interacts with her patient portal. And one thing that I notice is because she has so many different specialists that she's seeing, none of them are talking to each other. They're all prescribing different medications. And yes, you would hope then that the pharmacist would be doing a great job of vetting those to make sure that they're not interacting with one another in negative ways. But it sure would be great if you had a solution like this where all of that can be consolidated so that everybody could be reading from the same playbook.
It's a brilliant point. And you gave a very personal, close to your heart example. But there are many people like this, right, that really, really struggle.
Yeah.
And hopefully, you know, the more we can connect all the data through a single application, the more success we'll have, making some sense and taking control.
One more comment, and that would be around compliance issues. There are so many reasons that people cannot take their medicines, and not all of them have to do with side effects, right? It could be a transportation issue. It's a cost issue. It's I'm taking a medication vacation because I don't want to feel bad at my daughter's wedding. There are so many different reasons. And if there would be some way to offer an opportunity to interact with patients around those topics to better understand their experiences, that would be great too. So then you're really treating the whole patient, not just the medication part.
Yeah, I can comment on that as well from a very practical point of view because we run clinical trials out of the center where I work, and it's often really up to the investigators to make sure that the GP has all the information, that any kind of contraindicated medications are avoided, and it's really up to them to prepare a letter and to do that groundwork. Even though the information exists in the protocol, the patients don't have access to that. They just depend on what the specialist and their GP knows. So if there's medications that they shouldn't be taking at the same time when they're taking part in a trial, it's really it just depends on the specialist and what kind of information they give out. So I think having something more practical and making sure that everyone gets access to that is really important, just in terms of common sense but patient safety as well.
Very, very important. Very, very true. Thank you for sharing your story as well, and very personal, Nancy. So we'll hear from Sheila, who's been tremendously patient, and also I want to keep us honest on time. We've got about 5 minutes to close the conversation, and then we'll be taken to the plenary room, the main room. But before we do go, if there's been a request from us to have one representative from our group to tell a little bit like a story around what we've discussed today. So I don't expect a volunteer right now, but I would really love you to think about it, and then maybe you can raise your hand after Sheila and say, oh, maybe I can tell our story. So over to you, Sheila, and then we will decide on the spokesperson for the group.
So before I forget, Alejandro, this one's for you. The app should have, in my opinion, an alarm so that people remember when to take their medicines. Okay? I know it's not just the data information about the medicine, but also a practical one. And it should be connected to a phone, obviously, right? And the other one is that I thought is about the dissemination about this. When is it, how are you going to make sure that all the right people know about it? You have to plan the dissemination in different ways, whether it's HCPs, patient groups, regulators, etc., hospitals, etc. And there was one more thing, and now it slipped my mind because I was thinking too fast. But yeah, those are the two main aspects. Yeah, it'll come back to me tonight in bed. So.
Yes, don't worry about that. Yes, so actually, great idea. We already discussed medication management. There are plenty applications there. We want to make something special, more special. That is really useful. One last question, because I see that some issues, and I would love to go into the different features that have been my my content. But if anything, I think the last question I would like to maybe ask you guys is about the experience where, because one commonality I've seen in these conversations, and probably things that that are giving me the aha moment, this has to do with the distributed aspect of health, meaning it's not just a single provider, we have several specialists. It's not just the patient, we have caregivers. It's not just the HCP, it's the healthcare provider, public, private, there are different. In your experience or in your opinion, how could we make that element more manageable? Not solution, because it means an administrative reform. We are not in here for that. But if you have any specific ideas on, well, maybe this single app, having a single app is best for me, or maybe it's about having an ecosystem of apps that work together for different aspects. Is it being able to have your information in a central place, and then the different actors being able to access that information? I find this question really interesting and challenging on my side. Not just.
When I download certain health apps, or for example, I was uploading information into a registry, for example, and there were ways that I could connect my health records, my 23andMe information, whatever, they were hoping to capture. I could, with a click of a button, integrate all of these different elements into this one app.
Okay, just a quick reminder that we need to wrap up.
All right, Gazda. Everyone is joining back in now.
Yes, so without taking more time, then hi everyone, welcome back to the main room. So I hope you had a fruitful discussion during your breakouts. For us, it was really nice, actually. A bit of a slow start with just text, and then people started to have the conversation. It was really nice to hear the points of views from actually the participants' experiences as well. So we are just going to quickly refer to the group leads, actually, because we had the 3 pillars, so 3 main work streams of Gravitate Health that were discussed today, and we have the challenges and opportunities with the real-world testing, and we had the sustainable uptake of the GLANs, and the translating the patient expectations with the technical developments in 3 different sessions. So maybe I would like to start with the group 1, whoever is the spokesperson, if they would like to tell just a highlight from their group in a few minutes, would be great.
I can do a couple of minutes from our group. We had very good discussions as well. And we are all in agreement that the leaflet is difficult. But then again, we don't need just another app. So it was good that we have the possibility to add this onto existing solutions. And it's really important that the information is tailored and that it is accessible. And they really wanted the solution to kind of know you as a person. And then the question is, how can we engage the participants? We were talking about how to kind of compensate if they are doing the testing. Maybe it's easier to get them more digital, with the more digital literacy to participate if we do it in a group and show and tell. So they had different solutions, but engage the patients through conferences they already attend to, make it fun, enjoyable, not just look at this and tell me what you think in a questionnaire. So we got some good ideas there. And most of the discussion regarding trusting the app came from kind of the patient organizations. If they are endorsing the app, then the patients will trust it, but also if other patients are using it. So that was the main kind of focus for the trusted venue for the medications. So very short, but very good.
Great, Lene. Thank you so much. I think they're really nice insights we're going to take note of for our discussions internally. And so from the second group, I guess Michael was from our group. Yeah.
I'll make it quick and I invite others to chime in. I think people really were open to digitalization, to converting from paper to digital. Main benefits would be better usability, personalization of the information. People really wanted interoperability with GP systems. We had a good discussion regarding sustainability and who could actually take this on. And I think the main point really was that the app could really promote adherence, and adherence is becoming more and more, there's more and more evidence around it that this really saves costs for the entire system. So put this at the feet of national or European health systems would be a good way going forward. Would anybody like to add anything? If not, back to Kirsten for group number 3.
Yes, thank you, Michael. I see now the group 3 is here as well. So from the group, Viola, I guess you are the spokesperson. Yes.
I can get started and then I'll hand off to Alejandra and the rest of the group because we had such rich and engaging conversations. So I just wanted to say thank you so much. We focused on translating patient insights into technical developments and how we can make this experience really meaningful in a way that we utilize patient engagement in building the apps. And what has become transparent is that it's not just actually patients that we should be inviting to build our apps. It's also caregivers. And then we also discussed a little bit of a taboo because sometimes there is this inconsistency around the approach of joining patient groups and HCPs and healthcare providers, and we ask ourselves the question, should that group be a little bit more diverse and include everyone? And the overwhelming answer from the group was yes, absolutely. And we went into even some examples around when this has worked really, really well. So we can take away quite a good lesson from that. And in terms of the types of engagement and what makes a really rewarding experience is not just about compensation, as a matter of fact, it's also about the feeling that this engagement feels like you've contributed, like I've been listened to, and that I've got a seat at the table. I am making a difference. So that rewarding part is actually being present, not just at the testing stage of the development, but also we want to be involved at the very beginning and during the development, but also after the development. It's really important to understand what actually happens. You know, how successful have we been? And that is very kind of kind of paramount to continue that engagement as well. And accessibility, we've spoken about quite a lot, to making sure that we're covering the needs of very diverse groups of patients with different specific needs. We're very mindful of that. And specifically, how do we know that this experience is a really great experience for everyone? And the answer was very, very simple. Sometimes patients know because there is this specific aha moment from the development team. And sometimes that is actually good enough to know that someone's listened. Sometimes when we repeat the idea, when we reiterate, when we circle back to the idea, that's really helping patients understand that is how I know that I've contributed something meaningful. So with that in mind, I would like to hand off to Alejandro and the rest of the group. Please feel free and unmute yourself and chip in. I hope I represented some of those ideas at least.
I think, Viola, you did an excellent job summarizing as always. I was hearing from the other groups, and I would add that we also had some considerations on the interoperability aspect and how these issues of interconnecting healthcare applications among different providers, and as well as the big issue of providing caregivers with access to applications. And I think this was also very interesting conversation. There were a lot of,
sorry, Alejandro. That is really amazing. I think that today we were able to gather a lot of insights from our participants. And I'm really excited and curious to see how our teams will implement this within the Gravitate Health project. You can follow the Gravitate Health project online on the website, and we will be happy to see you again in other opportunities that we have to engage, especially around the patient engagement open forum. So feel free to follow the PEOF page on patient engagement signups, where you can stay on top of developments and new sessions that are upcoming in the next months. We really hope to see you again. And since we are already a little bit over time, I think
Vincent, just before
yes.
we close, just on that note, I would like to thank all our speakers and moderators from our Gravitate Health partners, and all the participants and the loyal partners from the PEOF as well, that all your contributions will definitely be valued and taken into account. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.